All right, guys, we're gonna go over a pre-trip inspection. There's a lot of noise. I'm gonna speak loud, okay? First thing I'm gonna do when I perform my pre-trip inspection is I'm gonna look at my daily logs and I'm gonna talk to the off-going engineer and see if there's anything I need to know about the rig. So I'm gonna look at those logs. I've got my red rag in my pocket. I'm gonna take my 20-foot view of the front of my rig. I always start one side with my 20-foot view. I'm gonna get down, I'm gonna look for anything hanging down, anything dripping, any leaning of the rig, and any suspension damage. This rig looks good. I have my wheels chalked and I have all of my lights on. And in my 20-foot view, I'm gonna look at my lights and see if there's any problems. If I have LEDs at about the 50% mark, if 50% of them are out, I'll take that light out of service, I'll note it. Otherwise, it looks good. I'm gonna have my hazards on, my headlights, my brights, everything is on. Everything looks good here. Now I'm gonna dive in and get my, what I call my blind man's test, where I'm gonna physically put my hands across the rig, make sure nothing's gonna fall off. Everything looks good here. My windshield is intact. I don't see any cracking on it. Everything seems to be tight. My windshield wipers are nice and tight and my rubber feels good. Everything's good here, everything's tight. Again, checking my windshield wipers, the rubber is good. These lights are good, nothing's gonna fall off. I just got to a new side of my rig, so I'm gonna get a new 20-foot look at this side of the rig. Over here, I'm gonna kneel down and get a 20-foot look. I don't see anything hanging down. For the components I can see, everything seems to be secure. I don't see any dripping. I don't see any leaning telling me that there's a problem with my suspension. It looks good from a 20-foot view. I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna look at my lights. I should have everything on. My lights look like they're intact. They're all on and they're good. I'm gonna start where I left off. I'm not gonna miss any spots. I'm gonna come right to where I left off. I'm gonna come back over here, make sure that my mirrors are tight and intact. The mirror looks like it's good, and I'm gonna come to my first door. When I check the doors in here, I'm gonna check my seat belts. I'm gonna check for any damage, any fraying, or any poor condition of my seat belt, and I'm gonna pull it all the way out. This is the driver's seat belt. If there's a problem with it, this whole rig is out of service. And then I'm gonna shock load it. It works good on the shock load, and then I'm gonna take my actual seat belt and plug it in and make sure it plugs in correctly. This seatbelt plugs in correctly. It's in good service. I'm also gonna check my window, make sure it rolls up all the way. It's important for strike teams, and there's no damage to my window. I'm gonna step up in here, check my dome lights. My dome lights are operating appropriately. That's all I'm gonna do right here, right now. Again, I'm doing my blind man's test, and then I'm gonna come to my first wheel. I'm gonna check my tires for inflation, condition, and depth. This is a steering tire, so it has to be 4/32 in depth, and everything looks good. I'm gonna reach around, feel for anything on the back, any bulging or anything, any damage. I don't see any cracking in the tire either. I'm gonna come to my lug nuts. These are kind of hard to pull off on this rig, but I'm gonna pull just a sample of lug nuts off, 3 to 4 lug nuts, make sure they're tight, make sure there's no spider cracking, there's no discoloration signifying heat, and that there's no corrosion to the rim itself. I'm gonna take my, you guys have the rag, I'm gonna take my hub cap off, this little rubber cap. I'm gonna dip my pinky in here and check for my hub oil. This is 90 weight gear oil, very stinky, but it looks like it's intact, it's in there and it's good. I'm gonna make sure I wipe off my finger because that gear oil will get on everything and ruin everything. Continuing my blind man's test, just to make sure that nothing's gonna fall off. Again, I'm doing the same thing in here that I did in the front. I'm gonna check every seat belt for damage, fraying, and any poor condition. And I'm gonna shock load them, plug them in. If one of these seat belts is not operational, that seat is out of service. The only time my rig is out of service is when the driver's seat belt is not working properly. I'm gonna check my window, make sure that it's working properly and intact. I'm gonna check my dome lights up top. And I'm just gonna continue down, making sure nothing's gonna fall off my rig. I'm gonna note, because I'm an engineer, that my water tank is full. That's important to me, but not part of this. I'm gonna check my exhaust, make sure that it's on nice and tight, and I use my foot to do that. Again, I'm back at my duals, another set of tires. I'm gonna check the inflation, condition, and depth of my rear duals. Because this is not a steering tire, it only needs to be 2/32. However, to get through demob on a strike team with CAL FIRE, it still needs to be 4/32. So I'm gonna note that to my property. I'm gonna reach around, make sure there's no rocks or anything stuck between my duals or no bulging of the tire. I'm gonna dip my head in and look. I don't see the tires touching, which tells me they're both inflated properly. And then again, I'm gonna take a couple of samples off of my lug nut, pull my lug nut caps off, make sure my lug nuts are tight. I don't see any spider cracking or discoloration tell me there was a heat problem. There's no corrosion on the rim, it looks to be intact. This wheel well looks good. I can see a little bit of my leaf springs. They seem to be intact. I don't see any damage to them or cracking. A quarter of them can be cracked for this rig to stay in service. I'm checking my mud flaps to make sure that they're on nice and tight, and they are. Right here, depending on where the stuff is in my rig, I'm gonna make sure that I have my DOT required fuses, that I have my triangle cones, and I have my extinguishers that are required by the DOT per the California DMV Driver's Handbook. I've come to a new side of my rig. I'm gonna have you guys stay over here. I'm just gonna verbalize the back side of my rig because we do have a space issue right now, so I'll have you guys just step over here. Again, on the back side of my rig, I'm gonna get my 20-foot view on the rig. I'm gonna kneel down. In the back of the rig, I'm looking for the fuel tank straps, make sure those are in place because I can see those. I'm looking for anything between my duals if I can see them, and I'm looking for the inflation of both of my duals. I'm also looking for anything dripping down, any obviously leaning of the rig or anything hanging off that I need to address. I don't see anything that looks good. I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna look at my lights. My lights all seem to be in working order. I'm gonna hire someone to put this rig in reverse for me so I can get my 2 white lights on. A volunteer will do that. If I get my 2 white lights, that's good. I'm also gonna have them put my left blinker or their left blinker on, the right blinker, and then the hazards, because those are 2 different circuits and I wanna check those. I'm gonna come to the back of my rig once I get closer to it and do my blind person's test. Make sure everything's nice and tight. And then when I get up here, I'm not so much worried about my hose bed, but I do wanna make sure it's secured. I'm just gonna this is a 6-sided check, so I'm just gonna hop up, put my head up here. Everything looks like it's appropriate up here. Nice and tight, nothing's gonna fall off my rig, which is what I'm really worried about. So now, continuing the check, nothing's gonna fall off. I've come to a new side of my rig. I'm gonna get my 20-foot view of this side of the rig. And I repeat everything as part of that process. I'm gonna start at the corner. I'm gonna put my hands on everything, and then I'm gonna make sure nothing falls off. I'm gonna check my tires, my wheel wells, all of that gets repeated. The only difference is if I have an oil dipstick on this side of the rig, I'm gonna check that as well whether the rig is off. So I'm gonna continue that around. I'm gonna check my doors, I'm gonna check my tires. I'm gonna repeat that same process. I'm gonna come back around. I've done 1 initial lap of the rig, and I probably checked my oil level. From here, I'm gonna get in the cab and I'm gonna check my cola. I'm gonna roll my window down so you can hear me. So now I'm in my cab with the rig off. I can do my static test as part of my cola. So first thing I'm gonna do is look at my gauges. It looks like I'm at about 125 PSI. I'm gonna sit here for 1 minute and watch my gauges, and they can't drop more than 2 PSI. If I have a trailer, it's gonna be 3 PSI. That minute is up. Looks like everything is good. Now I'm gonna do my applied test. I'm gonna put my foot on the brake. I'm gonna make sure that I disengage my parking brake and I have chocks down. My parking brake is disengaged. I have my foot on the service brake, so it is applied, and I'm gonna wait 1 minute, and it can't drop more than 3 PSI. If I have a trailer, it'd be 4 PSI. My 1 minute is up. Now, I'm gonna turn my rig on. It's gonna get a little noisy. With my rig on, I'm gonna let the compressor fill up my tanks. I can see the needle is climbing, and I'm gonna check my cutout. My cutout parameters are between 120 and 140 PSI. On this rig, I know that it's cut out when the needle stops and I hear my air dryer spit. While I'm waiting, I'm gonna check my steering column, make sure it's on nice and tight. My steering wheel is on nice and tight. I'm gonna check my defrosters, and I'm gonna check my windshield wipers, make sure those are working properly. I just heard my spitter, and I can see that the needle has stopped moving, so that means my cutout was approximately 130 PSI, which is within the normal parameters. Now I'm gonna draw my brakes down with my parking brake disengaged, and I'm gonna check my cut in. So I'm gonna start stabbing my brakes down, watching my gauges. I'm gonna take a tactical pause right at about 100 and see if my needle climbs. I can hear my RPMs rising, and I can see my needle climbing at about 100 psi, which is within the normal parameters for my cut out. So I have my cut in and my cut out, or for my cut in, excuse me. So I have my cut in and my cut out. Now I'm going to draw my brakes down, and I should see audible, or I should see visual, and I should hear audible alarms between 55 and 75 psi. Right now it's 60 psi, and I see a visual light, and I can hear an audible alarm, which means that this rig is working properly. With my hand over the service brake, I'm going to feel for that emergency brake to pop between 20 and 45 psi. So I'm continuing to draw it down between 20 and 45 psi, and I can feel the parking brake pushing against my hand, and it's fully popped out now, which means that I'm within perfect parameters for my spring brake test. The two tests that I still have to do is to roll forward at less than 5 miles an hour and apply my service brake and see if my rig dives one way or the other. In addition to that, I have my parking brake set. I can hit my throttle without chocks and see if my rig stays in place. I'm also going to note that my compressor is able to fill my tanks from 85 to 100 psi within 45 seconds. And all of that looks good with this rig. Now, I'm going to check my power steering before I get out. With my hand at 12 o'clock, this is a 20-inch wheel. I can't have less than 10% play in my steering. I have to have the rig on for this test. I'm going to lean out and look at my tires. At 12 o'clock, I'm going to start moving the wheel and see when my tire moves. I can see my tire moving. I move less than 2 inches. My steering is tight, within 10%. Everything looks good. Right now, everything is good on this rig. I'm just going to let these brakes pump up. I'm going to tilt my cab and check everything under the cab. Probably brake there and then we'll bring it back.